Jazzcast Pros.
Welcome to Season 8 of the Fearless Fridays with Maryann podcast. I am your host, Maryann Rivera-Dannert, and in this season, we're embracing what it truly means to live an empowered life. It's time to step into your power, reclaim your voice, and rewrite your story. Join me on this journey of growth, resilience, and fearless transformation as we explore how to unlock the tools to thrive, not just survive. Get ready to nurture, heal, and rise as we become fearless, fabulous, and free together. Today we have another amazing co-author from the newly released book, Surviving Her Uncuffed Trauma, with a bonus Surviving Him story. So without further ado, tell us your name and a little bit about yourself.
Okay, my name is Drucilla Matthews-Beach. I'm 68 years old. I have 2 children and 4 stepchildren, 17 grandkids.
Wow.
And I recently retired as a pharmacy tech. I have been in the medical field for over 40 years. I've been a mental health counselor, pharmacy tech, nurse's aide, and I'm a caregiver for my mom currently. So I basically just stopped that. I was also a school teacher. So I've been through it all. Basically dealing with children and adult seniors are my passion. So when it comes down to anything, when it deals with a child, that's me. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to do everything I can because children are our future and we need to pour into them. And that's where my focus is. Basically for our youth, our teens, trying to get our young ladies to know that they're more than their bodies, that what's in their head is what counts. They need to think more of themselves, think positive, and that the person that God sends them is going to be somebody that's going to motivate them, push them to their good, and allow them to be able to prosper.
I love that.
And that's what I look for.
I love that. Well, congratulations on the newly retirement. So to add to everything that you just said, you are also a published author. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So your chapter in the book, Surviving Her Uncuffed Trauma, God turned it around. Tell us the story behind that chapter title and what made you say yes to being a part of this anthology.
Well, I've always wanted to be an author. Didn't think I could do it. And when I was presented with it, I'm like, okay, let me start and let me try it. And I started, then I stopped. I talked to Tara and basically she's like, your story needs to be heard. I sent her what I had started writing and I was telling her about, what I had basically been through. Like from my chapter, God turned it around, centers around my dad and my first and my current husband. I basically looked at when I was 5 years old, I watched my mom being abused by my dad. And that abuse basically continued. He basically left us and my mom basically raised us by herself. So he would show up, pop up just to check to see whether my mom had somebody else. But he was like very degrading. And he used to say, you're not going to be anything. You're not going to prosper. And that's the mindset that I basically grew up with. So when I basically started in relationships, it seems like the people always start off, my relationships would start off well. And then they would turn around and you would have that abusive situation. I would be in that abusive situation and they would start degrading me, telling me I was nothing, that I couldn't do anything without them. And I'm like, I'm better than this. And I basically it took me a while before I focused on me. I basically had listened to what everybody else was saying. And my whole thing was, I think what it was where I didn't have my dad in my life, I basically was looking for that love that I was lacking from my father in those relationships. And I think that's what some of us women do. We look for what we're missing in one thing into the other relationships and basically carry those things over. So even though you're in a relationship and things start off good, and if you told them about why you weren't with that other person, that basically stays in their mind and they use that against you later on. And I found that to happen over and over again. And my first husband, he basically had cheated on me. And that, as far as abuse, he wasn't abusive. He didn't, what you say, really downgrade me, but he was the financial type person. So some people control you with money.
Right.
You know, abuse comes in so many different aspects.
Right.
And when you take finances and the person has to totally depend on you, that is another type of abuse. And that's a bad type of abuse because you can't just walk away. So I found myself finding jobs, and I've always worked. So I would work 1 or 2 jobs just so I would have my own and didn't have to totally rely on him. And basically I put him through school. So we had our first child. Everything seemed to be perfect. And then it was like, all of a sudden, it turned around. And he no longer was, when I was pregnant with my son, he wasn't, what you say, really there. Was always missing.
Yeah.
And, you know, you check and he's like, well, I'm at mom's. But when you call, she's like, he's not here. So it's like, where are you? And I never forget, I walked this one day. I had both my children small, and you had to walk almost a mile. I'm walking in the snow with them because he was supposed to come pick me up. Said he didn't have a gas. So I get there and he had another person there. Both of them were asleep. I walk in the house and they're in the bed. Yeah. So I went upstairs furious, but I said, you know, that's it. And I just turned around and walked back out. Didn't say a word.
So you definitely have been through some things. And, you know, I appreciate the fact that you paused and you acknowledge that financial control is a form of abuse. When you're financially dependent on someone, that is a form of abuse, which a lot of people sometimes feel and think and say that unless you're being beaten, you're not being abused. But financial abuse is a form of abuse. So what made you say yes to, well, you already answered that. What are you hoping that the readers get out of reading your chapter? God turned it around.
Okay. To know that if we put our faith and trust in God, that no matter what our situation looks like, that God can turn our situation around. But the thing is, we have to lean on him and we have to give it to him, because sometimes God puts us in situations to see if we're going to depend on him or what we're going to try and do it on our own. We take things and we do it on our own and find out we messed up. And we just don't truthfully trust. And that's our thing. We don't really trust and say, well, God is going to really work this out for us. It's like, okay, well, we talk to our best friend and they'll tell you, everybody will give you some kind of feedback. And we look at those feedbacks and take it from there instead of just totally waiting and depending on God for that turnaround. And that's what happened, like with my dad. I went through the different things with him. And before my dad passed, well, he ended up sick with a stroke. And I found him almost, and they told me 1 hour later, my dad wouldn't have been with me. I found him on the floor. And from that, I had to learn to forgive. And I just asked God if he would give me that second chance to rebuild a relationship with my father. And I basically worked with my dad until his passing. And once we basically started working on our relationship, I would take him out. I was paparazzi consultants. I do paparazzi jewelry, and my dad became my model. So I would dress my dad up, put the jewelry and stuff on, and take pictures and stuff of him, and we would just travel. So I would take my mom, because my dad was in a nursing home, and he stayed in the nursing home. I was really upset about that, but then my stepson told me, he says, hey, how about I'll come and take care of him? He says, I can work on my music. I'll take care of dad, grandpa. So I brought my dad home from the nursing home, and things started turning around from there. And we would just go out, take a drive out during the day, and we just talk. Yeah. until, it got to the point before he passed. He wasn't able to talk. He wasn't able to do anything. But I let him know that I forgave him, and we prayed. I asked him if he would accept Jesus into his life because my dad was Muslim.
Okay.
And he's like, well, at first she didn't, but toward the end, my dad had accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. We would read the Bible together. And the night that he passed, I was sitting there holding his hand, reading the Bible. And it was just that I was relieved and calm because I was able to basically forgive him. And we basically fulfilled that relationship that a lot of people don't get a chance to make up. A lot of people don't get a chance to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But my dad apologized to everybody he had hurt and said he was sorry. So I look at it that, God changed his whole demeanor from being that negative person, one that had to always have the last say, who felt as though he was always going to be in charge of everything. And he used to say, oh, your mom is real sick and she's going to die. So I'm going to take over everything. And I used to tell him, how do you know you're not going to go before her? And that's what ended up happening.
So what advice would you give to the listener who comes from a broken, household and they don't have a relationship with, their father or their mother? What advice would you give to that individual?
Okay, I would tell them that they need to reach out to them. Even though it's been a hurtful situation, no matter what the situation is, if we can't forgive, God can't forgive us. So we have to have a forgiving spirit. And just to call them and say, hello, how you doing? Yes, we had some problems, but can we put that in the past and leave it in the past and start working on building a relationship today?
I love that. So you are on the Fearless Fridays podcast. How are you living a fearless life?
By living every day to the fullest. I wake up thanking God for allowing me another day because our time is not promised to us.
Right.
And I just thank God for everything that he's done for me, the doors he's opened, the doors he's closed. I thank for all the trials and tribulations I've been through because they were there to make me stronger and to let others to know that no matter what you're going through, that you can make it out. I've seen where people have been in relationships where people will say, well, you're never going to make it out here. You can make it out at anything, but you have to have that faith and that trust to know God can turn it around. And we basically have to lean on him for it.
I know what you mean, Drucilla, and thank you so much for sharing that because it does take a lot of strength and energy to forgive and to move past the hurt and the trauma. You definitely have to be in the right mindset. And you know that I love my coffee, which gives me energy, but it also makes me feel jittery. And when the caffeine wears off, I'm back to having low energy, which means that it causes me to start doubting myself and second guessing myself. And I've been meaning to find something that will help me with my mental clarity and give me a natural boost. A few days ago, I've started taking Magic Mind, which is a mental performance shot. And I've been drinking it every morning for a few days now. And within the hour or so, I feel a difference. And the good thing is I can still have my morning cup of coffee because, I'm not giving that up. And it has 12 real and natural ingredients. And I have felt the fog lift. I have more energy and I feel balanced. I think that you will like it. And guess what? As a special thank you to our listeners, you can receive 20% off your first order by entering the code FEARLESS20. So say goodbye to grogginess and say hello to experiencing more clarity, calmness, and be ready to work through the trauma. Make sure that you check out the show notes for your code FEARLESS20. And Drucilla, we definitely have to have you back on the show to dig in deeper into your journey. Talk a little bit more about forgiveness because sometimes it's easier said than done.
Yes.
So definitely we'll have you back on the show to talk about that. But for now, where can people, get connected with you and support you and buy a copy of the book, Surviving Her Uncuffed Trauma?
Okay. On my website, it's called GodTurnedIt.com. The book, I also have t-shirts and sweatshirts, cups, mouse pads. So it's like different things. And if they see something they might want, I even did a few Christmas ornaments so they can hang it on the tree, because sometimes if you give a person something that can also change a person's life. And a hug, a smile. People don't realize how much a smile means. Because sometimes a person could be having a bad day and you smile or you just say, hello, how are you? Can I help you with something? And that was the one thing when I was working, everybody used to say to me, they says, whenever they came into the pharmacy or wherever I was working, they say, you always have a smile. They said, we know things is not always good. I said, but things are really good. Yes, I was going through something, but I refused to let the enemy win. That's my thing. I refuse to let Satan win. He cannot have my life. He cannot have my loved ones. He cannot have my future.
I love that.
The thing is, God knows our future. Satan does not.
That's so true. That's so true. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I will make sure to capture your website on the show notes for people to connect with you and support you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity. God bless you.
And we have another amazing author of the newly released #1 best new release book on Amazon, Surviving Her Uncuffed Trauma, with a bonus Surviving Him story. So let's get started. Tell us your name and a little bit about yourself.
My name is Tiffany Jones. I am a mother of 3. I am an inventory management specialist. I am also a cheer coach, a praise dance, and I'm in the process of starting my nonprofit, which is Purposefully Given LLC.
So you have a lot of things going on. You wear many hats. How do you find balance? How do you find time to do it all?
For me, finding balance ultimately is being able to get strength from God and get strength from God. So I know certain things that I have to do on a daily basis. And in doing that, it just comes natural. The things outside of that, I just find, again, the strength from God. I just ask him to help me to be able to carry out these tasks as I move along.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about the nonprofit that you're going to be creating. What is that all about?
Okay, so I grew up in foster care. I'm also a domestic violence survivor as well as a sexual abuse survivor. So I know growing up, one of the things that I seeked and searched for was love, just natural love, because I didn't necessarily get it at home. So I want to be able to utilize the resources that I have and some of the talents and gifts that God gave me to be able to show other children that may be going through the same thing a way out. Kind of when you're in situations you don't see the sunshine at the end of the road. And I just want to give my testimony and be able to help somebody else make it out. I notice day to day going through life, people are like, Tiffany, I can't believe you went through that. And they draw strength out of that. So ultimately, I just want to be able to give it back to those children in foster care, whether male or female.
So you mentioned finding love the natural way. Talk a little bit more about that. What exactly does that mean?
Oh, for years and years and years, I seek love. My mother, she was a drug addict. My grandfather took us in. He was an alcoholic. He didn't know how, I believe he didn't know how to show love. I don't even remember one time that he told us that he loved us. We constantly heard what we weren't or that we want nothing and we would never be nothing. Here recently, within the last 3 years, I separated from my husband. I became celibate, and I ultimately just wanted to realize how to love Tiffany wholeheartedly without seeking validation from others. So I started walking in to, I guess, opening up to the gifts that God gave me, whether it be showing love to others. My heart is full when I know someone else is happy or growing in life thanks to something I did. So the people that surround me now are the same way. They are the same people. They hold me accountable out of love, but as well as they just accept me for who I am authentically. And that's the love that I feel like everybody needs. A lot of the time in the world, we have social media, we have just life in general. They put all these standards on people and they feel like they can't be who they are without feeling less than because we seek validation from others. That's not love. Love is people that love you for your true, authentic self.
I love that. I love that. So that leads us to your chapter in this amazing book, Surviving Her Uncuffed Trauma. So the name of your chapter is I'm Still Standing.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what the journey behind that is and what made you say yes to being a co-author in this book.
ultimately, I have been through a lot. I have endured a lot in life as far as, again, foster care, being in the streets, running the streets. I was a runaway as a child. I dealt with men twice my age. I dealt with domestic violence as well. And all of that has something to do with, again, me not knowing my worth and loving myself ultimately. So 3 years ago, I left a abusive relationship or marriage. I left my marriage and I stepped out on faith. And I just said, Tiffany, it's time for you to start over. Show your kids that that's not the way you should be treated, and just start over ultimately. The first year, I struggled. The first year I really struggled. I struggled with self-worth, just trying to figure out life itself alone, because I had never been alone without a significant other. The second year, I grinded. I went super hard and I just worked myself to death. So January of this year, my New Year's resolution was to do stuff for the first time, learn how to experience life for the first time outside of anyone else or anything else, and just do first time. A friend of mine, which used to be my sister's counselor, she saw the opportunity presented by Miss Kathy, and she said, Tiffany, I think this would be great for you. At first, I was a little nervous because I don't necessarily like to be in front of people and in the forefront. Also, that has something to do with self-worth as well. Feeling like that, I don't want to be seen, right. But I realized that God was pressing me into a different arena of life. So that's what made me contact Coach Kathy and do the book. And as well as just knowing it's an amazing opportunity to be able to give back, not only to God, but to the people out here that really need us.
I love that. I love that. So what's one key takeaway that you hope the reader takes away from reading your chapter?
My key takeaway that I hope the reader takes away is to know that it doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter what you're going through at this very moment. That number one, Jesus has your back. Like every step of the way, God has your back. But number two, to know that you can make it through it, as well as overcome it. Also, I really, really hope people know that when we go through trials and tribulations, that we go through those as a lesson and be able to help somebody else out. Not to count it as robbery, but ultimately as what God needs you to go through in order to be who you are, but ultimately to be able to bring somebody else through that may not see another way.
I love that. And it's, interesting listening to your story, because sometimes when we go through things, we feel that we are alone, that we're the only ones that are going through something. And our stories are pretty similar. So we'll definitely be having you back, to just dive a little deeper into who Tiffany is. But you are on the Fearless Friday podcast. How are you living a fearless life?
I am living a fearless life by setting myself aside and my fears and my emotions aside and allowing God to lead the way. Yeah, so instead of me hiding, because that's what I was doing prior to, hiding myself from the world, I'm allowing my true self to be able to radiate throughout the world, whether through social media, here at my job, in my household, and just letting people know that it's okay to go through. It's just making it through and knowing that God loves you and you are worthy from the very beginning.
Before we get, your information on how people can connect with you, what's one quick tip that you can leave our audience with that might be going through something right now?
One quick tip that I can leave our audience with is knowing to cast your fears and your problems onto Jesus. He doesn't care how you say it, why you say it, when you say it. All he cares is that you come to him and leave it there, so you will also be able to walk fearless as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. So where can our audience and our listeners connect with you, support you, and grab a copy of your book?
Okay, so I created a link tree. It is Purposefully Given LLC, spelled exactly how I said. You will be able to find my social media tags as well as a link to be able to purchase my book.
And I'll make sure to capture that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being with us Tiffany, and for your bravery and your authenticity and saying yes to this amazing project.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hey, Fearless Warriors, don't forget to check out Magic Mind and get 20% off your first order. The link is in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to leave a 5-star review and share with a friend or two. If you're not already following us on social media, come join the Fearless community at MRD Empowerment Solutions on Facebook or Instagram, or visit our website, Maryann Rivera-Dannert